Hail Pandawans and journey orcs walking that illustrated Orctober path. Another sunny sunrise with Samwise and another orky Orctober video. Are you getting bored of these yet? Alright, I'm just checking. But, we got to finish up this month strong. We're not going to do an orky video every day, and not every picture we draw is going to be an orc, but they're going to be the predominant piece of artwork that we do this month. And again, I know that I was making jokes, but someone had suggested Gnomevember and then Dwarfcember. That doesn't really sound that's not as pleasing to the ear as the other ones, but but who knows? Maybe we'll mix and match some of that up. And I haven't even done any of my crazy, demonic jack-o'-lanterns yet for this month, so I might do some sketches of that as well. So with this video, I wanted to start off with just some simple shapes, and in general, I wanted to do something a little bit lighter, a little bit more colorful, cartoony, whatever it is. Everything is so heavy, everything is so brutal these days, right? Let's change it up a little bit and walk along the whimsical illustrated path for just a little bit. Again, none of them are really groundbreaking. I started with triangle, square, circle, upside down triangle, rectangle, and a diamond. So I'm sticking mostly to those. I mean, in order to make heads and faces, unless you're going really cartoony, you got to kind of break those silhouettes of those basic shapes. But I think with a lot of these, you can still see the basic shape of what they are and then how they ended up. But the goal was not to take a sphere and illustrate an orc face and keep the sphere the same shape and silhouette and profile. It was to just take it as a base. And sometimes you can make some really cool stuff. Sometimes you come up with some stinkers. But it's still pretty fun to do. This one I'm working on right now, he ends up being probably my favorite at the end of it. It just seems slightly different. What's cool about it is if you start with a different shape, profile, silhouette, and you kind of stick to that gives you a different feel from what you normally do. But if on the inside, the interiors have a lot of the basic lines that you would normally do, or the art and pen strokes, then you get a little something cool. It's something that on the outside apparently, is the shape is different than you normally do, like that the guy on the right there, the upper right, it's like a big old round looking, weird looking orc dude, and then the middle one too. But what I was saying is, if the outside silhouette is different but the interior stuff is similar, then you get kind of that nice balance of something old to go with the something new, or something new with something old. So a lot of times people don't want to try a new style and all. I get that too, because half the time when I'm drawing something in a new style, I keep wanting to go back to my own. But what I'll do is I'll try to finish that in the new style, and then I'll see if there's elements of the old style that I can bring in. I've talked about this before, so sorry if I'm boring you guys. And hopefully most of you just listen with the mute button on, so you don't have to deal with all the blathering. So these, again, obviously way cartoony, not my traditional orcs and stuff, but there's something fun to do, nice little change of pace, stuff like that. And I really wanted to go with, see if you look now and turn the sound on, you can hear me talking while you look. I'm just going with kind of big, flat, saturated colors. Not trying to do any kind of crazy shading, at least at the moment. I think I went a little overboard on some of the shading for this because I wanted to keep it very simple, but that's okay. I got caught up in the moment. But I just wanted to go with simple colors where everything was either a shade of green and gray for or black for the orc's skin and hair. They all get the same kind of eyeball treatment with the glowy orange eyes and stuff like that. But the idea was just to break free from the brutality of the previous images. Well, mostly just the messy black and white bristly brushes that I was using. I actually break one out in here too, just to give the skin a little bit of a texture. So I think that's what I'm really finding the use for some of those is just to give texture. Because as an artist, doing this in Photoshop, you're using these brushes. You actually have to use brushes to make texture, or you have to make the texture yourself. And that's normally what I do. If there's a rock or a tree or, little blemishes or whatever on skin and stone, I'll just draw it myself. But man, it's so much quicker if you get like a brush that's subtle enough that you can just like, just do a strike of the brush over the object that you're working on. And it just gives it that little bit of extra noise so it doesn't feel as digital. Now, I've actually had lots of people say that they like the way that I do they'll ask if I painted this. I go, no, it's digital. And they're like, oh, well, I like seeing the brush strokes and all that you do. And I think to clarify that, they like the messiness of the strokes. They're not completely blended or rendered to death. Compared to some of the art that we see out there, especially like the final kind of art like that you see for, movies or box covers. It's beautiful, but it is rendered, sometimes over rendered. You don't get to see that little bit of, artistic smudge and flaw and all that. And I get that. That's also for what lazy people say, oh, like it doesn't have the heart. It's like, no, you're just being messy and lazy, so there is a time to have artwork be super polished, especially if it's like a flagship image and stuff. But there's also art that is really kind of messy, but still feels polished. Like look at any Frank Frazetta painting. It is really rough, really raw, but it's still that power and energy is there. And that was good enough to be Conan book covers, or things like that. So don't worry about, because, as artists, we all fall into this. You'll see the latest trend or whatever the latest thing in art is, and it's like these, like beautifully rendered and all this crazy bounce light and stuff like that. You're like, oh, I got to learn that. It's like, well, you can, but that's not going to be the style in the next 10 years or the next whatever. As journeymen, right? We know that the path that we're on is going to continue. There's no final destination for us. I mean, there's stops along the way. There's victory to be celebrated, quests to be taken, goals to be achieved. Again, no dreams. Dreams are for those who sleep. If you have a dream, make it reality, make it a goal, make it a quest. But yeah, like the style that was in for art when I started was realistic medieval fantasy type stuff. And with Blizzard, we just kind of threw that out and made comic book. That's like the Swedish chef. Comic book. I know that's not the real accent for Swedish chefs. But we made the fantasy meets comic book kind of style, where a lot of our fantasy characters were super heroic in proportion and, costuming and things like that. And that's one of the things I've always loved about creating art. Like a lot of times people fall into the thing of it having to be real or having to be realistic. And again, there's a genre that, or there's people that like that, right? I've never liked that. I've always liked my characters being over the top and fantastical and, but having elements of realism. Again, going back to this sort of thing, taking a different silhouette, but adding to it the things that are familiar. And I think that's what we did with a lot of the fantasy artwork, the sci-fi artwork, the horror that we created at the beloved day job. But again, a quick video. I swear the next one I will go back to. We will go levels of brutality that we have not seen before. If it were a metal band, it would be Brutalica. Before the ballad that everyone's mom liked, and before they cut their hair. Go back to the early years. All right. Well, that is it, Pandawans. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you again soon for another Orctober, Orky goodness video. Cheers and beers, everyone. Remember your ABCs. Always be creating.